What's up, Pitt fans? Hey, remember me? Noah Hiles here, along with Abby Schnable. Pitt loses a tough one here in Clemson Tuesday evening. 69-62 was the final score. A game where the Panthers led for all but 32 seconds in the opening half. They quickly lost the lead at the beginning of the second half, and while they were back and forth for a bulk of the final 20 minutes, down the stretch kind of faded away and lost what really, Abby, was a must-win game if this team hoped to receive an at-large bid. We could talk about tournament stuff. I'm sure that's what we will talk about on our actual college basketball show later in the week. But we'll focus on this one. Abby, we do a good, bad, and the ugly. We'll start off with the good. What's your good?
My good is that despite Blake Hinson being limited, they had four guys all jump up and kind of try and fill that hole. You can't really fill the hole with Blake Hinson, but I don't know if there's been a game this season where all four of them have really stepped up. Bub Carrington with 18 points, Ishmael Leggett with 15, Jaland Lowe with 11, and Zach Austin with 10. When Blake's struggling, you need other people to step up. Granted, in this time, you also need Blake to step up. But I really like the fact that those guys, just tried their best, especially Bub down the stretch. I mean, those two back-to-back three-pointers really kept him in it. And then, eventually it fell away. But seeing their efforts while their teammate was struggling is, if they are to make some sort of postseason run, whether that's NCAA or NIT, it's good to know that it doesn't all have to fall on Blake Hinson's back.
Yeah, on the note of, you pointed out like an offensive good, I'll say defensively, they were really good in the first half. They limited Clemson, a team that's one of the better shooting teams in the ACC, to shoot 39% from the floor. There were 0 second chance points for Clemson in the opening half. And they turned the ball over 7 times in 30 possessions. That's 23% of their possessions ended in a turnover. That's crazy. So that was good, but the bad, Abby, and I'll throw it back to you, was those turnovers didn't amount to much.
Yeah, and that's my bad is, today and just in general, Pitt is very good at creating these extra opportunities, such as turnovers or even, grabbing offensive rebounds to get a second chance points. But they're not capitalizing on them. They had 11 turnovers today, 7 in the first half. And like you said, wasn't it? It was 0 second chance points. Or sorry, I'm thinking of a different stat. Ignore me. 11 turnovers, 9 points off of those turnovers. Those are fast break opportunities that you really should be capitalizing on. And then 10 offensive rebounds and only 7 points. And one of them, there was in the second half, Zach Austin. It was the third offensive rebound of that play, and it took them that many tries just to get the second. So it's great that they're making those opportunities, but you're not going to win a basketball game if you're not capitalizing on them.
Yeah, and you're also not going to win a basketball game more often than not when your best player scores just 6 points. And, I want to be clear. I mean, we've given Blake Hinson a lot of credit this season. He is pulled this team back to life when a lot of people thought it was dead. Numerous times, after it's lost to Syracuse in January, after it's lost to Miami later in January or early February. Yeah, it was later in January. He's been their best player. He's a first team All ACC caliber contributor to this club. But I mean, he was a non-factor tonight, Abby. He shot the ball 9 times, which is almost unheard of for a guy like him. 0 for 4 from 3, and just 6 points. That cannot happen in a game like this. And that's the second time in 8 days where this has happened, where they went into a huge quad 1 opportunity on the road, and they allowed their best player to be taken away. And I'm not putting all of that on Blake himself, because they've got to get creative with how he gets the basketball. If anyone's watched him play, it doesn't take much for him to get a shot up, right? Like, you've got to find a way to set screens and when you lose the battle of physicality, which Jeff Capel talked about in the post game, this is what happens when you can't screen guys and when you can't get Blake a little bit of space in the basketball. They take away the thing that makes Pitt the most dangerous. And there was nothing from him today. He made their first layup of the game, but that came like 12 minutes in.
14 minutes
in. Yeah. So, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to see them lose that way, because you would just expect heading into this final stretch after they beat Virginia, and you look after he scored 41 against Louisville, you would have thought, okay, well, this is what they need. Their best player's playing at his best right now. And while he was strong against Virginia Tech, you can't deny that. He had 22 points, which was a team high. I mean, he was a non-factor in their two most recent losses, which are, they're not going to be, those aren't going to be the losses that kept them out of the tournament. It's the losses to Syracuse and Missouri earlier in the year. But they needed another heroic effort in at least one of those two games, and they didn't get it from their top player. So that's my bad. We'll go on to the ugly now. Abby, what do you have?
So I have that, Bub Carrington makes a shot with 3 minutes on the clock, make it a 3-point game. It's plenty of time, easy, one possession game. And Pitt goes on to not score a field goal in the final 3 minutes. They only attempted 4 shots, missed all 4 of them, and weren't able to get stops on the other end, had to resort for fouling. And it's just, when your offense is dead in the water like that at that point in the game, something's wrong. And I get, Blake Hinson didn't have a good game in general, but that's, you watch games where their best players a non-factor all game, and then all of a sudden, when it matters, when it really comes down to it, this is what happens. And, Bob Carrington really did his best to try and get that. I believe it was 7 of his points were scored in the last, from 10 minutes to 4 minutes or something like that. He scored a lot of points in that second half to try and surmount a comeback. And he can't do it by himself. And so for there to not be a single shot made in the final 3 minutes, that just, makes me I'm not a Pitt fan, but that's hopeless a little bit, because that's the time you need to be at your best. That's when you win games, and they just couldn't.
Yeah. And to build upon that stretch, Abby, for all but 21 seconds of those final 3 minutes where they didn't make a shot from the floor, they didn't have their starting point guard out there. I asked about it. I said, was Jaland Lowe hurt? Because at the 4:30 mark, he was subbed out, and he didn't come back in until 21 seconds were left, and the game was all but over.
Yep.
And Jeff said no. His answer, and I don't want to, misquote him here, so let me look it up real quick. Just want to make sure I have it 100% correct. He said, sorry, this is horrible radio. He said, "We liked the 5 we had in there. They were playing well." That was his quote. And I know I'm not going to doubt Jeff Capel's coaching ability. He's the ACC Coach of the Year. He's forgotten more about basketball in the last 48 hours than I've ever learned. But it's hard to say that they're playing well when they're not. They hadn't made a shot in the last 3 minutes. So that just, and again, I'm not going off of anything I've heard or anything, but just intuition tells me there's a little bit more to it than there has to be. A little bit more to it than just he wasn't playing well. Lowe wasn't amazing today, but he turned the ball over once. He was 3 of 10 from the floor. That's incredibly inefficient for his standards, because he's normally a very good shot taker. But for a team that reached the bonus with 12 minutes remaining, he was perfect from the foul line. He's a good distributor too. I'm very curious to learn more as to why he was not in for the final 4 minutes, because I'd have to imagine that him, Leggett, and Carrington together out there is a better offensive alternative to anything. So that's ugly. Another ugly I just want to throw in is, and I've expressed this in mailbags and post-game stuff, and it kind of died down a little bit. It kind of died down a little bit in recent weeks because they'd been winning, but it's obviously clear what Pitt needs to do this offseason. It needs to find a center because it gets exposed in these games where, Jeff can't go out and outright say, we're getting beat up in the low post. We are not tough enough down low. But that's what he's talking about. You look, it's in the rebounding margin isn't as bad as you would assume it would be, right? And there's other things that aren't as bad as you would assume it would be. But I mean, my goodness, there are bodies on the floor. They're falling down. They're getting knocked around, literally knocked around down there. There's no offensive presence, and you can do a lot of different things as far as double teaming and helping. But eventually, good teams like this are going to catch on, and you're going to have a stretch in the game where you go big on big. And to Federico's credit, and to Guillermo's credit, they've had games where they were able to get the few big stops needed. But when you're going against PJ Hall, your odds of getting those big stops are a lot lower when you have a player like that.
And it doesn't help that both of them were in foul trouble for a majority of the second half, too, because it's like then they can't play as physical. I mean, that's when he got a majority of his points was in the second half. He only scored 4 in the first. And so, battling foul trouble, you're not able to be as physical. And to Jeff Capel's defense a little bit here, you're out 2 big guys that you had wanted to have this season in Pop Conte and Jorge, but still, like, the foul trouble is an issue, and it's making it glaringly obvious when their other leading scorer, I don't know how to say his last name, so Noah, help me out with that one. Ian Schieffelin.
Yeah, Schieffelin.
I mean, he only scored 3 points in the first half. And then these two go into trouble. So like you said, I mean, Chris and I talked about it on the mailbag too. What do you need to replace Blake Hinson? I don't think you need to replace Blake Hinson. I think you need someone physical down low.
Yeah. So that's all we got for today. Tough loss for the Panthers. This show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar. Whether if you're in town for a Steelers, Pirates, Pitt, or Pitt game, Mike's Beer Bar is right across the street from PNC Park and has the best selection of beer in town as well as amazing food options. They have over 20 TVs. You can catch all of your sports action over at Mike's. You can come in and try one of their 500 different available beers, 300 of them being local beers, as well as their 80 different local craft beers available on tap. You can try a flight and get all the combinations you could even dream of. You can also try their steak on a stone, which is an awesome meal cooked right in front of you with a heated stone. As you enjoy a night out in town, come to Mike's Beer Bar and get your sports fix and experience the best bar in Pittsburgh. Pitt might want to have a drink at Mike's Beer Bar after this one. 69-62 the final here in Clemson. She's Abby Schnable. I'm Noah Hiles. We're signing off. We'll see you, in a day or so, the college basketball show on the Post-Gazette Sports Now YouTube channel and podcast network. Take care.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.